I would like to bring up Deneen Tiger, and she is going to help us tonight by giving her career transition story and testimonial. So it's all yours, Deneen.
All right, I'm going to move closer to the camera because I think it's, and they can see us a little bit better here. All right, hello, Crossroads team here as well. I'm happy to talk through my transition through job search. I actually started October 31st of 2019. So it was almost 2 years ago. It doesn't seem like it could have been that long ago, but it actually has been, and it's been quite a job journey. So what I want to start out with is that first day that I was looking, I thought, well, it's November 1st, and now I need to brush up my resume because I knew about my job transition for about a month, but I was very devoted in kind of cleaning things up and transitioning and getting out of that role at the time. And so I just kind of hit the ground running, started online resumes, LinkedIn, Indeed, etc. But I hadn't really started my networking at that point. And I'm thinking to myself, well, I've been a director level, VP level of a marketing team for over 10 years, so it shouldn't be that hard to find a job. And I had a lot of great interviews to start with, but I really realized towards the end of December with the holidays and everything, things are slower during that period anyways. But join, and Crossroads was one that was recommended, so I totally hopped on board with the Woodbury group and actually did that 8-week course that Tom was just talking about. And I tell you what, when you talk about and think about God's plan and the journey that you're on, you're never alone because he's always with you. And I just felt when Tom reached out to me, I thought, gosh, it's a great opportunity to tell my story and to encourage everybody to take that course, because it is, I think it is really important. And from that, let me back up just a little bit. So when I started the course, I bet probably 10 or 12 of us, I think, in that those first meetings. And, COVID hit during that time. And luckily we had finished the 8-week course because it was January through like the first or second week of March. And then COVID hit. And I tell you what, the people that I met in that 8 weeks, we got pretty close during those 8 weeks. And we continued meeting after that and had devotion time. And it wasn't so much about job search. It was about supporting each other through the many trials and tribulations that all of us had, and all the emotions that we're going through because of COVID, and just the jobs shut off on LinkedIn, and there was not a lot of networking that people were doing because it was no coffee shops weren't going to be open and things like that. So imagine that, and that was just really, really tough. But in that, God did have a plan for all of us. Some people landed really quickly, others, it's been a long journey, and everybody has a different story. Part of my story, I needed to figure out what I wanted to do. Did not have, at first I thought, I don't know that I want to go into consulting, and I thought I just realized, it's time for maybe this gig economy night such a bad idea for me. And I'm older, and my husband's almost getting ready to sell his business. So we thought, well, why not give that a shot? But I continued to apply for jobs and whatnot. But the other big thing that happened was because of COVID and Crossroads started just going online and meeting online, those first few weeks were pretty tough. And I realized that I could give more to my community, and especially to the community of marketers. I think there was on that first Zoom call, there was maybe 10 or 12 people from the Woodbury group that were on that call, and about 5 of us were marketing people. And I just thought to myself after that call, I can't sit here every week and we're all about the same level of people going after maybe the same jobs when there wasn't a lot of jobs to choose from out there. And what started out as about 10 people, I emailed a few people that I met that were marketers, and they thought, yeah, that'd be a great idea, just to talk about what we're learning while we're off. But then from those 10 people, it turned into about 25 people. And then through networking, I met a couple of people that I thought would be great speakers for this marketing group. Well, that really worked out well. So what turned into meeting like every other week turned into meeting every week. And what grew from 10 people, we have now over 140 people in our database, and I'm still networking breakout rooms, and then have a guest speaker as well that focus on marketing topics. But we've also had like HR recruiters and people like yourself, talking about the job market, and career coaches, and just all sorts of things. So, and I know that there's a link on the Crossroads site if you want. I welcome any marketing people. We're still going to keep it going. We're not going to close her down because there's always people in transition. So it has been a little lighter lately because I think people are finding jobs and they are having more interviewing opportunities. So we meet so it's a great opportunity. But for me, it gave me purpose during COVID, and it gave me that was my way to give back. Too. I needed that in my life. I like to bring people together, and I'm just that kind of a person, and I just was missing that part, of not being able to lead a big team of marketing people. So this was kind of my chance to bring a lot of people together from all sorts of different marketing functions and different marketing levels, in their careers. We had college kids graduating all the way up to, CMO level marketers. So that's been a really fun part of my transition. So then in the middle of all that is when I did make the decision to go into consulting. And I had I did a job application for Authentic Brand. They're a fractional marketing CMO consulting firm. And that was back in 2019 of June of 2019. And in September, they called me and I interviewed, and they provided me a job offer. And I thought, this is my path. This is what I've been waiting for, and God has gotten me there. And just a wonderful, wonderful organization of CMOs, and I've just really had a great journey with them so far. It took a little while to get to get my first client, but it was a nonprofit for blood clots out of Boston, Massachusetts. So great team of people there. I'm still working with them, and we'll continue working with them probably for another 3 to 6 months. And then didn't land my second client until June. But as all this job transition and things happen, so my second client happens to be a fire truck dealership out of Alabama. And it's been really fun. They are very faith-based driven. And so it's just wonderful. I get a message from the CEO with prayers for me and my family almost once a week. And it's just been an amazing journey with them as well. But with this pandemic and with the supply chain, they had to end our contract. So the contract ends at the end of December. So even in this gig economy, and it's been just an amazing journey, but I will still be in transition all the time, I think, with the ebb and flow of getting different clients onboarding and things like that. But I'm up for it. I know that this is what I want to do. It's in my heart now, and I know that I can help all these small companies that are coming to us. And it's just been a blessing, just a true blessing. So, but that is part of my story. I don't want to go too far over. I'm not sure exactly what time it is, but a couple minutes. Okay. I would just totally encourage people, though, to take advantage of that 8-week course. I can't count how many networking meetings that I had out of Crossroads and the people that I met, it's just been amazing. And I think they'll be lifelong friends. We're still getting together, you know, we try to get together once a quarter and just do a little happy hour now that things have been opened up. And so that's been amazing. And just to have those connections and to keep networking too. That's the other thing. It's like, you know, a lot of us, when we go into a transition, we're like, oh my goodness, I've not networked. I have no idea where to start. So I would also encourage, once you land, is to keep networking and keep coming back to Crossroads and meeting more people, and you know, having the benefit of this larger group of, you know, over 2,500 people in the LinkedIn group. That's just an amazing, amazing network. And I can't tell you just how thankful that I was going through that transition and knowing that I had all this support behind me, because we did need it. And especially after COVID hit, it was the backbone to get all of us through it. I think is just to have that support with the people that we met right away and were able to connect with very, very quickly. So thanks to Tom and for bringing me here tonight, and also just thanks for the last couple of years. It's just been amazing. All right, take care, everybody.
Good evening again. Our speaker tonight is Tom Colosimo, and I met him probably 15, 16 years ago as I was transitioning back to the Twin Cities from Northwest Arkansas. That's a long story, but Tom and I have known for each other for a good long time, and I have known Tom primarily in his role in recruiting and helping people with dealing with recruiters, resumes, interviews, that sort of thing. He has a great deal of experience. He's worked professionally in that area for a long time. And I introduce him tonight, and he's going to tell us about working with recruiters and the special sauce.
Good evening, everybody. Nice to see you out there in the Zoom land. And this is my first time presenting kind of face-to-face Zooming. So this is kind of a little bit different day. I'm going to try standing up, so it's going to be a little different way how to approach it that way. I feel better standing up. Usually I'm working in a room, so it's kind of, I have to stay put, not move much. So anyway, I'm a career changer. That's my confession. I'm retired now, but I was a career changer through my whole life. I started out in accounting, worked in accounting over 23 years. St. Thomas grad in accounting and finance, started out in Fortune 500 manufacturing company, progressed through all those years, controllerships, things like that. And then I got tired of doing accounting, and in the early 2000s, there was a recession in 2001, 2002, and I moved myself into recruiting, all because of some recruiters I knew who enticed me to make this change. It wasn't necessarily on my agenda to do it, but they said, Tom, you know accounting so well, you know the inside and outs, you know what a controller does, you know what an accounting staff accountant does, cost accounting. I said, sure. All you got to learn is the sales stuff, you know. And I wasn't really a natural salesperson, but I kind of caught on to what they were saying, listened to them, networked with a few different recruiters around the Twin Cities and staffing agencies. And accounting, I worked there for about 5 years, and then worked at another company called Bancorp Group, technical recruiting for a couple of years. And then the Great Recession came and made me want to change my career again. The Great Recession of 2008, things like that. So it was time to take a look at something different. And I was at Thomas, Minneapolis, and I was getting into career coaching. And something passionate of it, I felt that I was being led that way. A lot of prayers and things like that. I was thinking about deep thinking and how I'd like to help people. I took a lot of assessments over the period of time in the early 2000s, and social working came up, things like that. And I was thinking, I'm an accountant. I don't know if I want to be a social worker. But anyway, helping people was kind of the theme. And that's what came together as I went into career coaching. I interviewed with St. Thomas. I was very lucky to come into there to be a career coach with an accounting background, which is unheard of. Okay. So they took a chance on me, and we took off from that. I had 8 lovely years working there at UST Minneapolis and got involved with career connections, company connections, and things like that that are still with me to this day. So as I went through the process of career change, it was always about transferable skills, and working with recruiters, as we're going to talk about tonight, are going to be the skills you have, emphasize those skills so that you can bring that message across to them, tell them what strengths you have, tell them what focus you have, so that they can do the best job possible for you. Sometimes it's a miss. I've worked on that side of the desk. I can feel that heat sometimes where, candidates say, well, they don't do anything. They never call me back. They just, what are they? They just work for the money. Well, of course they're working for the money. That's their job. But we'll talk a little bit about that today as we go through this presentation about why it works the way it does, how you can work with that situation, build those partnerships, because it really is a partnership that you're trying to build with, to be honest, focused, and clear when you're talking about objectives with them. Then you'll get your best ROI basically on the application. So what I call it is the secret sauce. Now we're going to talk a little bit about the COVID impact too. It's not like it was 2 years ago when we're working, as you know, with interviews being more virtual, things like this being more virtual, things along that line. So you have to kind of work around these different situations to make that work in the same fashion. And again, we'll move forward from there. So next slide. So the agenda that I put together for tonight, usually I like to ask the people in attendance what their agenda would like to be, but we're going to go kind of through these issues and hopefully I'm touching base on recruiters that are out there, the types of jobs that recruiters work with, okay? How to prepare for the battle. When I say the battle, I don't want to make it sound too morbid, but I mean, looking for a job it's a lot of work. It's a project. You got to be your own project manager. We're talking about PM people, CPM people, things like that, but you're managing this as a project through your prayers, your spiritual strength, people the networking stuff that all comes together to make this happen. So we'll touch base on that tonight too as well. Face-to-face meetings, the how and why I'm engaging with people and recruiters themselves. Post-meeting with the recruiter, what do you do after you meet with the recruiter the first time? What does that mean? What does that look like? How do I check in? What happens? So things like that we talk about. Then the offer, do we accept it or not? You don't always have to accept an offer. And if you feel that you're that desperate that you have to, that's a different situation there, but you should keep thinking about that. But, talk about the acceptance process, things like that. And then, of course, if you want to accept it, success. That's all good. Everybody's happy. The recruiter's happy, you're happy, and the client's happy. Hopefully, that's what the whole thing's about. And there's a lot that kind of hooks around that situation. And then staying in touch. How do you stay in touch with recruiters afterwards? You don't just close them all off, because those people can still be useful down the road. The actual lifetime job these days is 3.7 years. And that just seems really short. So, you may land a job and you may be there 10, 15 years, which is much less than it used to be. So you might be using recruiters or that same recruiter or the same group of recruiters again to do the same kind of work for you in the future. So never let them, don't burn a bridge and don't let it go cold for them. That's everything. So when we talk about the issues of candidates working with recruiters, some people really have the spirit of working with recruiters. Or maybe they had a bad experience. They'd rather set their hair on fire, or they'd rather have a root canal than to work with a recruiter. Are we taking chats? Okay, good. I'll just keep to this point and then we'll talk to chat, unless it's related to that.
Yeah, you can see it.
Oh, can't see it. Okay. Was there a question?
I didn't see one.
Okay, something popped up. So anyway, I'll keep going, but you can keep filing the questions that you have there, and we'll touch base on that as we go. We're going to kind of wing it a little bit that way. So, but again, the recruiters can be your friends, and how you work with them and how you approach them can make a good business partnership for you. So don't think of them as the enemies. There are some recruiters out there that aren't that good. They feel like you're being used by them. They really don't follow up at all. They don't seem to care about that of you. But there are most of them that I know anyway that have been in the business for at least 5 years, are caring people and they want to help. But they still have to make money too. So it goes on that line as well. Next slide, please. Did it jump? So yeah, the issues that candidates generally have with recruiters, of course, is the fear, the unknown. How to communicate with a recruiter. Now, many of you probably have worked with recruiters, so I'm preaching to the choir, but there might be some people out there, and I find that quite often, that have never worked with a recruiter as such. They might have worked with a hiring recruiter at a company, and we'll talk about the difference between staffing agencies and corporate recruiters, but maybe they've never worked with the staffing agency. How does that all fit together? So as another option for you. Frustration. Some of you probably had frustration. I tell the recruiter, I want this kind of job, and they pitch me another kind of job. Or they say, yeah, we have tons of jobs, and I wait for them to call me or email me, and nothing ever happens. Okay, that can be frustrating. Lack of enthusiasm, depending on what type of recruiters you're working with. Maybe they just don't seem to connect with you, or you're not connecting with them. That can happen. Personalities can be, affected somewhat. They're maybe just getting off on the wrong foot or something like that when you meet with them. So you've got to keep sourcing the right recruiters in a lot of cases that work for you the best that way. Lack of trust. Maybe you don't have a trust for that particular recruiter, or understanding the process. The process is so important to understand. When you're working with a staffing agency or an executive search firm, corporate recruiters to a degree too, you want to understand up front, what is the process? How do I engage with you? How do I carry this forward? Because you don't want to just sign up with some firm and then just kind of sit back and go like, okay, what's going to happen? It's like watching the pot boil and watching the grass grow. It's just not going to happen. You got to kind of get it all laid out up front to know how you're going to engage, how you're going to touch point with them and move this process along to make it best for you. And then, miscommunication is going to happen. And of course, the follow-up. That's the key thing. Okay. So the positive candidates have with recruiters, especially the third-party recruiters, like I keep saying these same old ones. There's a lot of other good ones out there too, but Robert Half, Randstad, Apple One, there's just, Express Pros, there's a lot of different ones, Skywater, things like that. But they have connections with companies. That's the cool thing. They have warm connections and they're working those connections with companies. So they can get you into companies that you may have difficulty getting into on your own. So that's one positive about that. It could be a gateway to that job or a job because they have those warm connections. And preparation for interviews. Sometimes they can prepare you. They can kind of give you the background of the people that you're going to be working with and meeting with so that you can understand a little bit about their background, their personality traits, where they came from. Obviously, you're going to do your own research too. Check on LinkedIn, do maybe a little bit of stalking about them and things like that, where they've been, what school they went to, maybe they went to the same university that you did. That can be a nice common point. Things like that you can learn about them ahead of time. Long-term partnerships that these firms have with these companies. So they are entrenched with them and they are a valuable vendor for that particular company, which can be helpful as well. Coaching situations. Sometimes you might have had a bad interview or something like that, and they can help coach you post-mortem after that interview and tell you, well, Tom, we got feedback, because they're presenting you. They'll give you feedback if they presented you. So let's say it didn't go so well and say, well, they thought that you were not really interested, or you didn't know our products, you didn't know much about our company, you said you needed a job. That kind of thing cannot ring very well with the potential employer. So they'll help you get through that and follow up. So you learn from these things for sure. And they can be a proponent for you. They can be your champion. If you do a good job and you continue to do a good job and manage the process yourself, they can be a good proponent for you. And they can also help with negotiations. Let's say a staffing company, you get to the end and you get this acceptance letter and you're sitting there, gee, I really could use a little bit more money than that. I thought it'd be a little bit higher than that. They can help kind of coach you through negotiations and take what you want back to their client and see if they can work that out. So these are kind of things that we're going to talk about a little more in depth right today here this evening, but just to kind of get you a flavor for what we're going to be looking at. Okay. So again, we have two types of, I've already alluded, there's two types of recruiters. There's the corporate recruiters and there's third-party staffing agency recruiters. The corporate recruiters are employed by the company. They're paid a flat salary. They also source roles for various internal company managers and departments. So let's say I did a stint one time working as a corporate recruiter at Wells Fargo, and I had probably 10 jobs I was working at one time, and they were all over the country. And going through the system, that was my component to manage and to keep in touch with those hiring managers, what the status was of those things. I was getting paid a flat salary, okay, as being a corporate recruiter for them. And my idea was to kind of keep my hiring managers, my customers internally in the loop as what I was doing and where I was at on the status. Okay. They also, corporate recruiters kind of manage the process. If you're applying to specific jobs at a specific company, the resume that you upload and the cover letter specific to the job gets uploaded. And the resume goes through an applicant tracking system, which is an ATS. Many of you probably have heard that. What, you often think like, well, I'm shoving it up in the system. What happens then? Some, clerk sitting there taking off on the other end an email and going through them. Not so. It's going through a lot more compilations before it gets to that particular person at that point in time. The ATS process, goes through the applicant test. I think we had something else. But anyway, corporate recruiters are applying to specific jobs. It's going through the applicant tracking system. You wait for a response. If positive, the process continues. Usually starts on the phone, screen, interview, things of that nature. If you like what they hear, proceeds to face-to-face interview, or of course, since COVID, proceeds to a virtual meetup. It might be with the HR representative, recruiter representative, or it might be a very sort of hiring manager, people that are involved with that. And the work, and again, moving ahead for staffing agencies, they work for a search firm, okay? So their relations with many companies. They have many managers at different companies. So it's different. They're working external. They are paid a low salary generally, but a high commission based on when they place a person. And usually if the person stays more than 90 days, it's a guaranteed type of bonus that they get. And most of the bonuses run between 20 to 30 placements. So staffing agencies like the Robert Halfs, like the Apple Ones, Randstads, people like that do this type of work. So again, the paid on performance, successful placement of candidates, base salary plus commission. That's their kind of what they're trying to make happen that way. It's highly competitive. The firms are trying to place their candidates into a company, into whatever they're working competitively, to see who has the best candidate and who can win the job for their firm. They want to make a three-way win. The way they used to explain to me all the time, you want your boss or the firm to be happy, you want the client to be happy, and of course you want the candidate to be happy. But the thing is that the payment comes through from the client or the company that they're working with. So that's really who they want to keep happy the most, as far as the relationships go from that standpoint. And again, now there's two types of recruiters in this field. One's called contingency and one's called retain. The next slide, please. Ooh, did it jump? Okay, contingency is the fees are paid by the company to a search firm at the placement. So what happens, like if I'm going in for an accounting job and they find me a controllership job and they say, Tom is the guy, we want to bring him on, we're going to hire him at $100,000, the 20% fee gets paid, things of that nature. Okay, that's what happens. No money out of my pocket. I just have to do a good job at interviewing and say what I am and walk the walk, talk the talk, okay? Retain recruiters, client pays agencies to find candidates. The other day, I had a University of St. Thomas MBA alum that I've known for 10 years reach out to me. He says, Tom, I have this firm that connected with me and they want me to pay them like $10,000 to help me find my job. And I kind of went, that sounds like a retain type of situation. And I really am not a fan of that. And then I started talking to some of my other people I know in the recruiting business who would not just say that, but they said that you shouldn't have to, at a level of about $150,000 salary, to pay somebody $10,000 to help you find a job. Those types of things are kind of like a red flag. So sometimes you can get hooked into those things, and I would try to shy away from that. I would recommend anybody that gets approached by a firm, national firm, wherever they may be, saying that they'll help go hunting for you, basically, and pay us $10,000. I would tell you to shy away from that type of usage money up front, and then see what happens. So that's the difference between those two there. Okay. So again, the process of calling into agency staffing firms, you call in the agency and explain what you want. Okay, pretty basic, right? You'll be assigned to a recruiter within the firm. They set up appointments to either chat on phone or meet in person. This is kind of the old-fashioned way. You might have a virtual chat these days, of course. Got to know your focus. They want to know your focus. When you're going in and asking a staffing agency, Robert Half, or any recruiter, they're going to look for the job for you, but you've got to be clear about your focus. They're really not that great at using for career transitioning. If I were to go into Robert Half and say, well, I'm looking to be an engineer, I've never done it, but, I think I could be pretty good at it, and they'll kind of look at you and say, well, that's not really our gig. That's not really what we do here. We got to find the square peg to the square hole. we're not in the process or in the business of rounding off the edges and trying to get you into another type of hole, basically. So you don't use staffing agencies in terms to change career, generally. Anyway, that's more for the networking side, okay? And of course, they deal with temporary, temp to hire, permanent, which is direct hire, basic activities. Obviously, all these different types of and many more are out there these days as well, okay? So again, be prepared to take assessment tests. When you go into a firm, first call them, they'll send you out maybe a battery of assessments to take online. So you take those ahead of time so they know kind of what your level is, things of that nature. They may or may not have jobs that match what you're looking for at that point in time either. So you may just have to wait or just put your information in there and see what happens. So we'll talk about that waiting game a little bit more too. If not, you just stay in touch. Check back as often as specified by the firm. So like if you talk to them, you meet with them and say, we really don't have anything right now, then you want to ask them, well, how often should I check back? Should I check back weekly, daily, every 2 weeks? Obviously, the higher up the position is, the less you check in. If you're going for a CFO job, you might check in once every month. There's 6 weeks. It's just a different type of area that you're going to be involved with. If you're an accounts payable clerk or an accounts payable clerk or admin or things like that, you might check in every week because that's a high turn. There's a quicker hiring ratio of those types of people, or CFOs, CEOs, CMOs. That takes a lot longer to bring a person on board with that. There's a lot of steps. There's a lot of deeper discussions that take place for those types of people. Okay. And if they do have a job, yay, that's great. They will prep you about that job. This is what I was alluding to earlier. I said they'll prepare you for the job and give you details, set up the interview for you at the time at the mutual consent time period. They will introduce and set up with the corporate recruiter or the team that you'll be interviewing with at that point in time at a mutually acceptable time. If it's a temporary job, you can start much quicker. Permanent jobs or temp to hire jobs, again, are more drawn out type hiring processes. If it's a temp job, let's say a contract job, and they say, we have a need here for a marketing admin or digital marketing person, or IT analyst, data analyst, whatever, on Monday. They interview you, they feel good about you. You might have to do some background checks and things like that, and you could start on Monday. Get placed quickly too, if they don't need you anymore. So, but it could also be a channel for you to get in there as a permanent employee if you show what you can do and be progressive with it, proactive about it. They might say, hey, we don't want to let Joe go yet. I mean, he's doing a good job here. Maybe we could kind of plug him into this other spot over here, and they'll kind of see how they can work you within the operation. I've seen that happen many times. So that's another possibility of temp jobs. Never just kind of throw temp jobs off the cliff. They could be very helpful from that standpoint. If it's a permanent job or temp to hire job, again, like I said earlier, the hiring process is a little more methodical. You might have a first meeting, second meeting, third meeting, whatever, to get to the point of the actual hiring from that standpoint. Okay. So I want to go back to the application tracking system, ATS system. Most of you might have heard about it already, and it's not as complicated as it may sound. Next slide, we'll kind of look at it. It's really the gateway into corporations. I call it the gatekeeper to screen out or accept resumes using keywords. We always talk about the keywords that are on your resume. I always tell them when I'm coaching people and I'm talking to them about what you should have on the resume, it really has to do with the job description and the requirements. There can be many different ways to say the same thing that you're saying, but it's not using the same word that they're saying. You want to match the wording, almost plagiarizing to a point, as long as you're telling the truth, but saying it the way they say it, not the way the terms that you might say it or the words that you might say it. That's the keyword thing. So as it goes through that ATS system, it's going against compilations of that, scanning through all the types of words that can be applied in there. And if it catches those words, it's going through, it gives you a higher ratio that you would be called or reached out to for having an interview. So that's the key thing about those keywords that you want to have on there. So tailoring your resume to each job that you're applying for is key. Don't use the cookie cutter approach. I know I've had some coaching people in the past that, they sent out, Tom, we sent out 50 resumes this week and nothing's happening. What's the problem? I said, 50? How'd you do it? I just sent them out, run like a machine. I said, that's not the way to do it. I'd rather see 10 quality resumes tailored And of course, maybe working some networking around it too, that we talked about, that type of application, getting to know people at the company, doing it that way versus slamming a bunch of resumes out in the field and seeing what's going to happen. So again, pay attention to your resume and your cover letter. I was just talking to somebody this morning. They had this boo-boo that they did. I called the boo-boo, where they had a cover letter and they forgot to change the name of the company on the cover letter. And I just went, oh my gosh. And every time I coach people, I said, make sure you're following all this, the cover letters, don't just start shoving out the door. So case in point, tailoring it, reviewing it, making sure there's no grammatical errors or spelling errors on the same token, that type of situation. So keep that in mind as well. So again, ATS for short, type of software used by recruiters. There's Brass Spring, there's Talio, there's a ton of different ones out there. They try to make sure that this helps them go through 200, 300 resumes quicker, supposedly, and then it goes off to the recruiters at hand in the company. It's initially created for large corporations that are accustomed to dealing with several thousand inbound jobs like Wells Fargo or US Bank, things like that, on a weekly basis. Today, approximately 95% of Fortune 500 companies rely on an ATS system, and it's really working its way down more and more into mid-sized and small companies as well at this point in time. So again, average applicants per job these days, about 250. This is about a year old on the data, so it might be more, it might be less. It's kind of what we're going to do. A funky situation here is how the workplace is going these days. The average screen of applicants asked for initial phone screen is 6. That's how many will usually get called for a virtual screen or phone screen or however type of screen we're doing it today. Generally, it should take about an average of 6 people to start the process. Okay. So again, to reiterate this, keywords, focus, alignment to the job needs, making sure that you're presenting that on your resume accordingly. It's marketing. And I use this analogy of, like, if you're buying a family with 5 kids, you're not going to have someone try to market a sports car to you. Conversely, a single person generally doesn't look for a minivan. Okay. So when you're marketing yourself, you want to make sure that you're marketing yourself at the level that should be, with the talents and skills that you have, soft skills and hard skills that you have that will match up to what their needs are. So it's you're marketing yourself as human capital, the potential buyer being the employer. Okay, there's another software that's out there these days. It's been out actually for a few years now. It's called JobScan. And this is the link is on this presentation here, where you can input your resume and you can input the job description, the 2 documents, and then you hit a button and it actually goes through this iteration and see how closely you're matching to the needs of that company based on that job description. It's very interesting. You can get about 5 free ones before they ask you to start paying for it. But a lot of people are using this and have used it already for years at this point in time. So you can kind of see how good your resume is compared to that job description. This might be a tool that you want to take a look at online. It's called jobscan.com. And you might want to take a look at that to kind of test the waters, so to speak. Again, the keywords, focus, and alignment to the job needs.
Tom, is that actually .com or is that .co?
Oh, well, that's how it came up. That was kind of weird. It did come up that way when it did, so I'm not sure why the backslash would come in. I might want to check on that myself. I think it's how they do something with the backslash. Maybe we'll get somebody in the audience here can check it real quick and make sure I didn't mess that up. It could be .com, but I think the backslash came up. That could be a typo. We'll check it just a second here. If, hopefully it's still around, because it was about 6 months ago. So just one pause. We're going to make sure that I've got the right URL on there for purposes.
Jobscan.co.
Okay, so the CO backslash is okay. I didn't make a typo. Unusual for me. but anyway, that's the deal. So, and I know I've talked to a lot of people who already know about this. So I'm not trying to make this a big deal, but it's a helpful tool that you can, at least test it a couple of times to see how your resume is working with jobs that you're applying for.
Tom, one point that I've found, when you know that you're going to have your resume go through an ATS, the keywords are almost always nouns.
Aha.
rather than, when you look at the job description, look for the nouns because you can't search on verbs are
Yeah.
really odd searches.
Good point.
And they vary so much, but the noun is what they're really going for. So that's how to think about structuring your resume for an ATS. When you talk to a human being, you'll want to do it differently, but
Right.
you'll
That's a
get to
good
the
point. I hope you all heard that we're, Anthony here brought this up, that really as far as trying to match the needs, use nouns that you're trying to do for your keywords, for your keyword searching. That's probably the best advice from that standpoint. When you get into the actual interview, then you can use the types of verbs, adverbs, things like that to describe the situation. But the thing is that, you might just say, well, I have that. That's just what I've always said. I've got the same type of things you're looking for. Well, how did you say it? Well, that's the way we call it at our company. Well, that's nice, but you got to use what they're doing. As I always say, when in Rome, use the language of talk as Romans do or do as Romans do. So I mean, if you're saying, well, that's what I meant, but it didn't help you to get the job because they threw it out because you didn't use the terminology. Unless you can get to a point where you're networking, and then you get somebody to say, no, he knows that stuff or she knows that stuff. Yeah, it's just be aware of that type of things. So, okay, thank you. Next one. All right, this is something I have this online. How much time do we have? I have a clock.
You got
8. Okay, good. This is a comment that I found from an online recruiter. Kind of gave us a little bit of background that he's researched over the time period. This guy's 𝙎𝙪𝙘𝙘𝙚 helps people land amazing jobs without applying online. Need help with your job search. Of course, he's pitching himself out there as a national guy. Whatever, 125,000 resumes he looked over this as part of this project he did, and he wanted to share what he had learned. Why the heck did I take the time to do this? 2 reasons, he says. One of the things he says, I wanted to know how many candidates are following best practices on their resumes. Best practices, okay. I wanted to identify data-driven opportunities that could help job seekers stand out. Okay. So some of the things that he found as takeaways was including a LinkedIn profile URL address on your resume is important to have it up at the top. It has been shown to boost interview rates by just simply having it on there, because companies do check your, in this vast sampling that he did, included a LinkedIn profile on there. I mean, I've seen many resumes myself that you put your address up there, you put everything, your phone number and whatever else, but you don't put the LinkedIn up there. And it's really important. If you have it, definitely put it up there. Some people forget to put it up there. If you don't have it up there and you don't have one, get it. I was talking to some college kids last week, and I said, you got to be on LinkedIn. Most of them did, but there's someone that did not. They just didn't think it was that important. And I said, no, it's very important to do that. So just in his analysis here, Mr. Austin Belkak came up with that 48% of people did not, only had it on there. So that's a lot. So we want to make sure we have it on there. Even in this time frame, this day and age, you think we'd have more than that. But anyway, okay, next slide, please. So then he kind of went on. Also, he said that he talked about candidates only included 51% of relevant ATS keywords and skills in the resume, heavily under indexing on soft skills. Soft skills are very important. They're your characteristics. They'll make you who you are. People, a lot of times, we'll see someone down the road here, they'll say that company hiring people want to see you as a person. And then it's almost like secondary that you know this stuff, but they know that you can demonstrate by your conversation what you've done in the past, those hard skills, which your software, things of that nature will come through. But how you are perceived as a person is so important to how you're going to fit into the culture and the teams you'll be working at from that standpoint. So again, 51% of people did not put these relevant keywords in there. Metrics are fantastic for illustrating value, but only 26% of resumes include at least 5 measurable results. 36% of resumes had 0 instances of metrics. So what that means is that your bullets, you always want to talk about the STAR story: statement, task, action, result. And the results, or even the stating of the situation, should have some kind of numeric quantifiers in that bullet. So if you improved revenues by 10% or reduced costs by 20% by what activity you did, that's your accountability. That supports your claim to fame. He's saying here that a lot of people did not do that. And I know I've seen a lot of resumes myself when people come meet with them. It's just a bunch of words. Sometimes the bullets are, Wall Street trying to fade. Okay. Not sure what that's about. Something popped up. They said that we got to have quantifiers. not just a bunch of words, things like nature. Okay. Recent data shows that the ideal resume length is 475 to 600 words. 77 of the resumes are outside that range. That meant that they were longer. People think they fill it up with more verbiage that's going to be better. And I'm somebody that's simple, quality over quantity. 5 bullets per resumes for job is what recruiters are liking. When I talked to them, they said 3 to 5. They don't want to see a big ton of resumes. 20 bullets are not going to be good for you, and they're not going to read them anyway. So you want to have 5 quality resumes. So that's what he brings up that way. And last thing here, one of the easiest ways to lose your reader is by including too much fluff. 51% of these resumes that he looked at included fluffy buzzwords or cliches. So be careful that filling it up with words and making it more of a narrative. Straight to the point. What did you do? Short and crisp. Your bullets should be just one from that standpoint. Okay, thank you. Okay, how do we prepare for that interview? Now we're moving along. Let's say we're getting this interview moving. The recruiters are putting it all together for you. You want to know the job description inside out. Recruiters are going to be wanting to hear you know that job. Okay, what the company does, the products and services that that company does. So important. Okay, that's very important there. Know your resume inside and out and be able to walk through it with the interview. Okay, so the key point here is knowing what the company does and why you want to work there is another good question. When I was working at the University of St. Thomas, we did a lot of online campus interviews, and we'd always have a post-mortem with the recruiters afterwards after they met with the first round with the candidates. And, you know, they'd rate the candidates, things like that. And I'd say, well, a couple of these people didn't know really what, this is Toro, for example, didn't know what Toro did. And my peer coach and myself just kind of like, we were just red-faced. We were upset. We were also embarrassed that these people did not know what the products and services were of the company they're integrating with. So that's very important. It seems so simple, but make sure you know the why you want to work there, what they do, how does that fit into your mission, vision, values that you have to align with the mission, vision, values that they have. That's so important because you'll be happier and they'll be happier from that standpoint. So, and again, star stories in your interviews: statement, task, action, result. Tell your story, become a great storyteller of what you've done using that tactic of that acronym. Okay. And check out LinkedIn profiles of those who will be meeting. Usually through staffing firms and agencies, they'll give you the names of the people you'll be meeting with in your meetings, obviously. So you can check out their backgrounds on LinkedIn, look them up. Maybe they went to your same school. Maybe they had the same kind of background you have. Maybe they worked at the same company you did. Things like that could help you understand more of how they're going to want to think and engage with you, type of thing like that. Informational interviews, this is networking, right? So with somebody who works with the company or had worked in the past, talk to people who have worked there now or worked there in the past. Those are going to be insightful people that can help you know what you should be saying in your interviews when you're going through the process. And practice, mock interviews, practice, and stuff like that. But the more that you hear yourself say it out loud, the better it's going to be. You can write things out or make an outline, but you're saying it in your head and you're filling in the gaps, and the ahs and ums don't happen in your head. It happens when you start freezing up. You might start saying, oh, and you're just going to say the wrong thing, and then you fill in with rambling. So the thing is to practice it so it's succinct, clean, crisp, and use your hands. I'm Italian, right? So I use my hands a lot. But I mean, use your hands to make forceful gestures. If you're, of course, you'd be sitting down, right? But you know, if you want to make an impactful point, use your hands and have them this way. You don't go like this, necessarily, but you know, just ways of making emphasis on things you want to. No finger pointing. Okay. All right. Next slide. So make sure your LinkedIn profile is complete. This is a no-brainer. I've been talking on LinkedIn enough that we should all be on board with that. And matches your focus. Make sure it's not, made 5 years ago when you're doing something else. Okay. To what your resume states that you see it in your interviews. So everything's got to connect. You've got to connect the LinkedIn to your resume to what you're saying. That's the genuine connection from that standpoint. Because they will check. They will check. Okay. Thanks. The interview, here we go. Of course, obviously, a lot of these things are obvious, but make sure you're dressing for success, more conservative style when you're meeting with the recruiters. If it's a virtual interview, the same thing applies, only that, you know, it's a little, sometimes you can have shorts on, I don't care, but the top's got to look good because you're going to be on the video. So I don't care if you want to lounge in a chair in your office, but have the tie, have the blazer on, looking sharp. That's how we work these days, so to a degree. Bring copies of your resume with you if you're going in. If virtual interview, you may ask if they need an electronic copy of the resume. If they didn't get it, or they say, hey, do you happen to have another electronic copy? You could, you know, send it to them so they have it. Normally, they should have enough copies on hand from that standpoint. Bring a portfolio or notepad with you with questions and notes that you want to write out or have for them. And if it's virtual, you have all this stuff laid out right in front of you. There's no excuse. When you're on a table, they can't. Some people I know, they'll put like post-it notes around the monitor so they can have notes that kind of perk their attention and remind them what they want to say. In front of you, you might have a notepad, glass of water, the job description, have all that there in a pen, and you're taking notes. And then when it gets to the end, you're looking at these notes and making sure you've covered everything you want to cover. And you can also, it'll remind you about questions you want to ask them too. So all that should be in front of you. And really, I know I'm standing up now saying how this is kind of a little different, but really standing up and doing an interview virtually, if you have a stand-up desk, something like that, a riser desk or a high top or something like that, you have better energy when you're standing up than when you're sitting down. It's part of theater, music, and things like that. It's very important that you can stand up, you can move around, feel more energy that way from that standpoint. Okay, next slide. Okay. Obviously, bring a list of references just in case they ask for them. Don't put references available on request on your resume. Don't hand references to them until they're asked for. Usually that comes much later, okay? Not during the first or second interview, depending on the situation, okay? Show up at least 15 minutes before the appointment time, relax and focus. If you're working with a staffing agency, like I said earlier, they'll coach you along this line. They'll say, you know, if you want to do a road, track it, over the weekend, you have your meeting on Monday morning so that you feel comfortable where you're going, scope it out ahead of time. But don't get there like an hour and a half early and sit in the parking lot, or don't, that just is too much. Don't do that, okay? If it's virtual, okay, here's the important thing. And it happens to me a lot, but people are meeting with me virtually and the technology is not working. They can't get the microphone to work. They can't get their camera to work. Make sure you've tested that out ahead of time. So if you're on Microsoft Teams, or if it's Zoom, or if it's Google or Skype or whatever you're using, make sure you got it loaded and you're ready to go, so that you're not getting on there and fumbling with it. And then it's 9 o'clock and you're supposed to be talking at 9 o'clock and they're waiting, and it gets to be kind of a mess. So that's one thing that this virtual world is, make sure your technology, and make sure the lighting, we've become almost like a studio kind of situation. You don't want the sun blasting behind you in a window. I hate that. I'm talking to somebody and all I see is the silhouette. I'm kind of trying to make out their facial expression, things like that. And make sure that if you're going to have lighting, it's got to be in front of you or on top of you coming down. You don't want it blasting from the backside. So be aware of that. Make sure you've got quietness, that you don't have a lot of kids and dogs running around, things like that. Just kind of find a space that works for you and keep it kind of whitish or blank behind you if possible. Not too busy or things like that. Dress appropriately, at least on top, as I said earlier. Depending on the interview time, be sure to have something to eat in front of you. Do not overeat. If it's the first thing in the morning, make sure you have some kind of a breakfast, because if it's 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock and you haven't eaten anything because you're so nervous, you practice, and then you get in there and it's like, you can start feeling a little weak. You can start feeling, just not with it. So you want to make sure you have enough to eat that makes you feel that you've got the energy you need from that standpoint, but do not overeat. Okay, next one. When meeting the recruiter or hiring manager, have a firm handshake, look them in the eye, have a smile. It's all about first impressions, okay? Smile, be positive, but not too giddy. Okay, don't go, I made a bunch of jokes. This is professional, serious business, okay? Sit with a good posture, don't slouch. If they're laid back and kind of hanging out there and talking, that doesn't mean you lay back. You sit there, feet on the ground, and you look them in the eye and you smile and answer succinct answers to their questions that they have, okay? If it's virtual interviews, you still got to smile, engage, and show energy through the virtual camera, okay? So whatever it is that you can keep your eyes, focused on them, look at the camera, don't be looking down like this, or You know, if you've got your Post-it notes around the monitor or the camera is, make sure that it's up there where it's almost like a teleprompter, that as you're looking at the camera, you're looking in the general, what do? You know, don't talk to your notepad, talk to them. And just make sure that you're smiling as much as you can. But, you know, using the gestures that you need to from that standpoint. Let's see, look at the recruiter or hiring manager in the eye and listen to them. Be smiling, things like that. Be genuine and attentive in what you hear. Listen to them. Know your resume and achievements. Like I said earlier, relate those achievements you have to this job. Again, connecting the dots, so to speak. Have good strategic business questions ready at the end of the interview. A lot of times I coach people and say, what do you like about working here? What are the biggest challenges that this position may have within this organization? Or what is the growth path of this position within this organization? And there's a lot of different questions that are strictly with the business, but you know that you've done your homework. They know that you understand their business and know where this business is taking them and how this job interacts with that goal that they have in mind. The ultimate end question is, what's the next step? I'm interested in this position. I think I have all you're looking for. I don't see why you wouldn't ask me back for another interview or to meet the rest of the team. I'd be so excited to do that. What's the next step? And they might say, you know, we want to have somebody in place by November 1st, or it might be January 1st. You know, you don't know. So you want to make sure you get as much of the flow of what the process is. You know, if they say, you can kind of get a vibe if they're saying like, well, we got 6 more people to interview. That might be a little bit, oh, okay, then you kind of back off a little bit. Say, well, we're interviewing 3 people at this point, and you've done a great job, and I'm pretty sure that we're going to want to have you come back in. So they'll give you some flavor and some feel about that situation. The reason you want to ask that is that you don't want to run out the door and then say, when should I check back? How should I check back? You know, and people call me saying, well, Tom, you know, I didn't ask that question. When should I check back? And I'm like, well, I wasn't there. So you don't want to be a pest, but you don't want to be, you know, appear, you know, that you don't care. So get those answers as much as you can up front if you can do that type of thing. Next thing, please. So the closing. Again, at the end of the interview, you want the job, say that you're interested. If it's not something you're interested in, still be gracious. You know, the time is being put in here. Let them know that. Later you can let them know that you're not interested. If it gets down a point, you kind of work that through. You talk that through. Again, show energy and positivity about the job. Ask what the next steps are, like I just said. I want to reiterate that because people forget it, say the thing. Finish with a good handshake and a smile, again. Or on virtual, of course, you've got to smile and confirm your interest. So you don't shake the hand, but you got to look at them in the eye and say, you know, with that energy you have in the smile, they're going to feel it. It will come through. And that's the soft skill aspect of a person. Your characteristics, your DNA, your interpersonal skills. That's what comes through, and that's what they feel the vibe from. That's very important from that standpoint. Okay, next one. Okay, post-interview. It's all done. Whew, now what do we do? Okay, just sit back and hang around or what? Let's see what the next slide says here. Okay, you send a thank you note to all people who interviewed you within 24 hours. Okay, a simple thank you card. Nothing fancy, nothing flowers, nothing about colors. A simple thank you card. And there you write it. It's usually blank. You just write out, I enjoyed our conversation, meeting, or whatever it might be. You know, and I look forward to the next step in the possible employment with your company. Sincerely, and you sign your name. Okay. If it's COVID related, and of course it's been done virtually, you can do an email. Similarly, type a thank you note with an email. If you are intuitive and want to go deeper, you can probably find out what their mailing address is, even if it was done virtually, and send them a card that way too. So they might take that as a, you know, going the extra mile, and they might say, huh, that's pretty intuitive. It's a great initiative to take that way. So, okay, and then follow up at the point of time agreed to from the end of the interview. Be a test. We mentioned that earlier. Request to connect on LinkedIn, possibly. Many times, you know, you can connect on LinkedIn, and when you do reach out to them and connect on LinkedIn after the interview, just say that, hey, I enjoyed meeting you again. Reiterate, enjoyed meeting you for that conversation we had about that opportunity. I'd love to connect with you on LinkedIn, just to stay in touch professionally. And that, where you customize that and personalize that, they're going to be much more apt to connect with you from that standpoint. Okay, next question. If asked back for another interview, you follow the same process again. And, you know, and just keep it going. Keep that energy going. If you want this job and you got it rolling, that's going to be more, that's going to keep your energy going and be confident more and more. So, okay, again, temporary contract jobs, they treat those interview processes just like permanent jobs to a degree, but note that they're going to be hired, you can be hired on the spot. So just remember that. It's a little different, but you still got to look good, you still got to be positive, good at handshake, and however you're putting this together and how you're meeting with them that way. There's probably less chance that you're going to have additional interviews. Maybe they want to have you come in and see the team still, but normally it's going to be pretty quick. It's going to happen. You got this, tick, 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 and let's come on in. Here, let's go. See how that all kind of plays out. And again, temp jobs can go for long periods of time, or they can be perm jobs in some cases. So keep that open as an avenue. If you're saying, well, I'm sitting around here for 2 years and I haven't found a permanent job, well, look at contracting. You get out there, get that resume active, keep adding, even though you're still looking for the real deal. Contract jobs in the nature of the area that you're trying to do, they're really great. And sometimes you can get a job out of that situation that's permanent too. That's that point. Okay. So you receive the offer. Okay, we're getting down to the finish line. Are you comfortable with it? If you have an issue with it, make a counter offer. Usually you're allowed one counter offer. Okay. You don't want to make this a marathon, a marathon of counter offers. So one shot, you're done. One and done. Okay. So if you don't like the salary, you talk it over with the recruiter, your staffing agency recruiter, or you do it on your own and make your counter offer to the corporate recruiter. And you say, this is what I need. I've done my market research. I have these types of abilities. I think that this is what could be the best thing for me. And see how it works. See how it rolls through. Usually it'll go through an HR pathway and then come back from the hiring manager back to you. Okay. So you might not get exactly what you're looking for, but maybe they'll go halfway, or a lot of times they'll just give you more PTO. That's not, you probably would like more money, but maybe they'll give you an extra week of vacation or something like that, just to kind of, buffer the situation. Or they might give you a signing bonus. I know there was a time when I got a signing bonus one time in one of my accounting jobs where I wanted more money for the particular opportunity. And they said, how about we give you a $10,000 signing bonus? And then, you got to earn the rest of it the next year, of course, because it's just a one-shot deal. So then after that, you're on your own, I think. So that's another option. So those are options you got to negotiate and work through that type of situation. And don't hesitate to graciously decline with professionalism. If it's not what you want and you can't come to terms, you may say, I need a job. But if it's not the right job, you're going to be unhappy. And it could be more of a short-term burn thing. If you take a job that you don't like, it could be a real disaster. So be careful of that. Okay. If it's what you want, accept it. Yahoo, celebrate, have a party, whatever it takes to do it. Next slide. Don't forget to reach back to all the people that you connected with for help. All these people, we just had a great testimony here earlier tonight. And those are people that she engaged with and is staying in touch with. Don't let your contacts go cold. I mean, you may say, well, Tom, I got to do my job. I can't be talking and stuff. Yeah, you don't need to talk to everybody every day, but just, poke out there once in a while and say, how you doing? Things like that. Stay in touch. It's a professional, friendly way of keeping the warmth of that going. And let all your connections that you talked with obviously know the good news and thank them once more for everybody's help along the way. Okay? And don't forget the social media profile is a must. Again, like I've said over and over and over again, LinkedIn is a must. And recruiters are looking for you 100% completed LinkedIn profiles. Keywords got to be in that LinkedIn profile. Recommendations, I don't know if I got that. Hold it. They're almost like references. If you can get some recommendations on your LinkedIn profile that within the jobs that you've had from a supervisor or a coworker on a particular project, or get those. So that's important too. Let's see, I don't know. How are we on time, Tom?
You got another 2 minutes.
Okay, great. Let's keep this thing going here. 5 things hiring managers know that job seekers don't. From a recruiter who placed hundreds of senior professionals. This gentleman, Dan Zhu, is a recruiter. There are a few crucial things that recruiters and hiring managers know that most job seekers don't. One of the things is career success is less about the technical skills and more about a person's level of social etiquette and their ability to influence their peers and superiors. The soft skills, how you engage with people, your professionalism, being assertive, but also being compassionate and also being able to compromise. How do you fit in? That's a key thing that they're looking for. And to short-tail off of this, when I did some on-campus activities at the University of St. Thomas back in the day, we would bring hiring managers, actually some C-level people in too, And I'd ask them as a facilitator at the end, I'd say, what is the key thing you really want? And they'd all look at each other. These are people from equal after companies, whatever. And they said, likability. Likability. I thought, wow, that's an interesting thing. But it's important how they see you, how they like you. Even if you can be the best accountant around, but if you're sitting in the corner, the fact that just analyzes all day with green shades on, there's probably a job for you that way. But they want people who engage, work on teams, and can develop and push along the products and the activities that they have going on. They also talked about once you hit a certain amount of experience in your role and you've hit a plateau, that might be happening for some of you that are passive seekers, it's time to take your head out of the sand and start interviewing, even if it's just for your own education. So start investigating. Don't become behind a dinosaur. Keep agile. Keep learning, lifelong learning of what's out there, software techniques and marketing, the digital techniques and things like that, and accounting and changing things all the time. Just keeping up on what's happening out there for sure. Next slide, please. All the basic skills are met. Likability trumps them all. HR people are not actually that important in the hiring hierarchy. They're just the gatekeepers, as many of you probably know that. You can negotiate and leverage other offers to great effect. Sometimes if you have multiple offers, yeah, that'd be really great. Sometimes you can use that as a leverage factor. If they love you and they want you, they know that you're the racehorse that they want to have. And you say, well, I got this other offer I'm kind of contemplating this time. And then they might get into that, like, oh, how much would it take? Things like that. So kind of weigh that out as a leverage factor if that should be your situation. You should interview your interviewers harder than they do you. That's one of the comments they made. So as you're talking to them and engaging with them, ask those questions that you have about the environment, about the job, about how they like working there, what keeps them up at night, what are the problems they see, things like that. So it's a two-way street. It's not just all questions one way and then you sit there and you go out the door. That's not how it works that way. And again, practice, practice, practice. These are the 5 things that these hiring managers came back with on their survey from that standpoint. And then finally, this is just my own little personal thing. I put this on every one of my presentations. I'm a sailor, and I always talk about how the winds change. And you have to tailor the sails to make sure you're going from point A to point B and not going to some other point that you don't want to go to, or we're not going anywhere in circles. We cannot direct the winds, but we can adjust our sails. Okay, we're all given a hand here. We're all given a set of cards. Sometimes we lose our job. Sometimes you get a job that's a bad job, things like that. Be ready for the winds to change. This last year and a half has been a case in point. Who would have thought that would have gone through the last year and a half and what happened? In 2019, we would have never thought of something like a pandemic. I remember when I first heard about this all happening in February of 2020, we were down in Florida and they were talking about this. And I thought, wow, what's going on? This is just crazy stuff. I mean, it's so new. Yes, we had gone through stuff like this possibly 100 years earlier, but that was a whole different world then. But this really was a different type of scenario. So be ready, be agile, lifelong learning, adjust your sails for the common wind changes that can happen. And, there you have it, the new secret sauce. Thank you and go to work. And I hope that you've gotten at least some of the things that you need covered tonight. I know we're not doing much. If I'm in a room and engaging with people, we answer as we go. But thank you for your attention. And again, hopefully we'll cross paths in the future. Take care.
Before you end, just a couple of questions.
Yes, okay.
Andy and I will get a little interactive with you. What's the most important thing that you want to convey through this presentation tonight? That, let's say, if it's the common mistake people make, if it's the common thing that people should do, what is the one theme that you want to reiterate right now to everyone out there that they should remember when they're dealing with recruiters?
Great question, Tom. Great question. And the thing that you really should have a takeaway is that make sure you know your focus. If you're taking it to the point of you're going in and meeting with an executive recruiter, I'm talking more in the staffing executive recruiter line. Obviously, when you're going in a corporate recruiting, you still want to have your focus there, but know your focus. Know what you want. Because I know when I was meeting with candidates, and I've been out of recruiting now a while, but if a candidate came in there and said, this is what I need by salary, this is the type of things I love doing in the accounting field or whatever it might be, that would keep my radar open. I would put notes in the system to make sure that as I'm putting keywords in there for me to track on an order that might come in, then I would go in there and do my random search, put some keywords in there and it'll pop up the 5 people. And then I would see you in there because you gave me that structure of those focuses and the words that you were using. So be careful that you're telling them what you want so that you get back what you need. And that's the key thing.
Right.
And I
And
think
you can do that very easily too, through that interactive questions that you're asking,
Yes.
and then reiterating with your power
Yes.
punch right there. So,
exactly.
yeah, so that can make a big difference.
Big time, big time. And that shows that you're thinking too. They really want somebody, anytime you refer to a staffing agency, they feel that vibe. They feel that your energy is coming through. You're strong. You're a strong candidate. You're not just sitting there, well, I just want to get a job, work some spreadsheets. It's just not going to fly. If you come in there, Excel, strong user, macros. I'm using a lot of accounting terminology here, I know, but for marketing or IT or whatever, data analytics, supply chain, all that's the same way. No, you can talk the talk, but how you deliver that message is really important.
I was going to say, you said that not knowing about the company is a real killer. I've done a lot of, I've interviewed a lot of technical people, and yes, that's the worst one. The second worst one that's almost as bad is there comes a point in the interview where the interviewer will say, and now have you any questions for me? And if the answer is, no, that's a really bad answer right there.
Yeah, that is so true. As I said before, have those listed out in front of you. Say, Tom, I can't think of that fast. List them out ahead of time. Have it on the notepad. You can say, yeah, I do have some questions here. Tell me about, just think that you have researched ahead of time.
If you go into an in-person interview, you've got your notebook with you, and it's there on one of the pages.
Yeah, you can
Just people love it if you take notes while you're interviewing.
You bet.
Definitely.
You bet.
That's so true. So yeah.
Well, thank you very much, Tom. That was very interesting. We
Thank you.
appreciate your time.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks as always. Again, this Crossroads seminar was supposed to be a little more interactive. We had a little bit of a technical difficulty tonight, so hopefully everything came across and you were to gain as much knowledge as possible. Let me reiterate a couple of things. Remember the one-day seminar this Saturday. You can sign up on the website. You can check out what's going on there. It's all there. Give it a look. We have 8-week courses starting. The one starting on Monday. If you're willing or you want to get involved in an 8-week course, go online, check it out, sign up. It'll be the best decision you ever made, at least in my opinion, because I think it is. The testimony today really focused on what it did for her and her transition and her ability to get to the next level. And then finally, our next seminar here next November the 11th on Thursday at 7 o'clock. Molly Steiner will be talking about a lot of different things. She's an expert in emotional intelligence, and I think you'll find that seminar to be very important. And then we also have another seminar coming up on Thursday morning, next Thursday. That would be the 21st. So check that out on the website and sign up. I think Harry is going to be, Ursula will be talking on a subject that is very important. So I would highly recommend you do that. So, again, thank you for attending tonight. We do appreciate you being here, and have a great evening. Good night. Okay.